Vernon, my mom, and for my grandma, who would be outraged.
I made a promise to Lisa Marie Presley 3 weeks before she died, and I'm about to keep it. She called me late one night, her voice shaking in a way I'd never heard before, not from fear, from fury, the kind of fury that comes when you've finally had enough. When you've carried secrets for so long, they start poisoning you from the inside out. And she said something I'll never forget. "Donna, when I'm gone, don't let her rewrite me the way she rewrote Daddy. Promise me." I promised, and Lisa Marie knew what that promise meant. She knew it would cost me. She knew it would put a target on my back. She knew people would call me bitter, vindictive, jealous, all the words they use when a woman tells an inconvenient truth. But she also knew I was one of the last people left who saw it all, who lived it, who could stand up and say, "No, that's not what happened. That's not who we were. That's not the truth." So here I am, keeping my word. Because Lisa Marie deserves that much. Because Elvis deserves that much. And because I'm done watching Priscilla Beaulieu control a narrative that was never hers to own. My name is Donna Presley. I'm Elvis's cousin. And before you write me off as just another family member with an axe to grind, let me be very clear about something. I don't need Priscilla's money. I don't need her platform. I don't need anything from her except for her to stop lying about the people I love. For 50 years, I've watched this woman build an empire on my cousin's grave. I've watched her smile in interviews, write best-selling books, produce movies, sit on talk show couches with tears in her eyes and tell the world her version of Elvis, her version of their marriage, her version of what happened in that house. And every single time, it's been the same calculated performance. Just enough truth to sound credible, just enough emotion to seem genuine, and just enough distortion to make sure she's always the hero and everyone else is a footnote. But here's what Priscilla didn't count on. She didn't count on Lisa Marie spending the last years of her life documenting the truth. She didn't count on Lisa Marie being brave enough to name names, to expose abuse, to pull back the curtain on what really happened behind closed doors. And she definitely didn't count on me still being here, awake, alert, and done being polite. There's a pattern with Priscilla. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I'm going to show it to you so clearly that you'll wonder how you ever missed it. She erases people, strategically, methodically. Anyone who threatens her narrative, anyone who remembers things differently, anyone who was there when she says they weren't, they get deleted from the story. Written out, dismissed. And if they're already dead, even better, because dead people can't contradict you. Dead people can't hold press conferences. Dead people can't defend themselves when you drag their memory through the mud while pretending to honor them. My grandmother, Minnie Presley, saw through Priscilla from day one. So did my Aunt Delta. So did my mother. These were the women who raised Elvis, who were there every single morning when he woke up and every single night when he went to bed, who knew him before he was Elvis Presley the legend, who loved him when he was just a boy who missed his mama. And Priscilla has spent decades pretending they either didn't exist or didn't matter, because they were witnesses. They saw the coldness. They saw the calculation. They saw how she operated when the cameras were off. And witnesses are dangerous when you're trying to sell fiction as fact. But the erasure of our family, that's not even the worst part. The worst part is what she's done to Lisa Marie, her own daughter, the woman who came from her body, the woman who trusted her because, despite everything, she was still her mother. Lisa Marie wrote about abuse in her memoir, documented abuse, named her abuser, put her pain on paper because she understood that silence protects predators and wounds survivors. That took guts. That took strength most people don't have. And what did Priscilla do? She tried to discredit it. Tried to suggest Lisa Marie's struggles, her addiction, her trauma, her complicated life, meant her words couldn't be trusted. A mother dismissing her daughter's testimony about abuse. Let that settle in your chest for a minute. Feel how heavy that is, how twisted, how unforgivable. That's not protection. That's not love. That's self-preservation at the cost of your own child's dignity. And if Priscilla will do that to Lisa Marie, her own flesh and blood, what do you think she's willing to do to the rest of us? To Elvis's memory, to the truth itself. I've stayed quiet for years because I thought maybe, just maybe, time would soften her. That age would bring wisdom. That eventually she'd look back and think, maybe I should stop using a dead man and a dead daughter to keep myself relevant. But she hasn't stopped. Even now, she's still doing it. Still rewriting history. Still positioning herself as the ultimate authority on a man she wasn't even living with during the final years of his life. And I realized something recently. Something Lisa Marie tried to tell me before she died. Priscilla's not going to stop. Not on her own. not out of conscience or decency or basic human respect. She's going to keep doing this until someone stands up and says, enough. No more lies, no more erasure, no more weaponizing dead people who can't fight back. So that someone is me, and I'm not here to be polite. I'm not here to play nice. I'm here because I made a promise to a dying woman who deserved so much better than the mother she got. I'm here because my family deserves to be remembered as more than inconvenient obstacles in Priscilla's story. And I'm here because Elvis Presley, the real Elvis, not the tragic figure she spent 50 years constructing, deserves the truth. This isn't gossip. This isn't speculation. This is testimony from someone who was actually there. And what I'm about to tell you is going to change everything you thought you knew about Priscilla Beaulieu and the empire she built on other people's graves. Let's talk about money, because that's what this has always been about, even when Priscilla wraps it in the language of legacy and love and preserving Elvis's memory. At the end of the day, we're talking about an empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And empires don't build themselves. They require strategy. They require eliminating competition. And sometimes they require betraying the people who should have inherited everything. When Elvis died in 1977, he left everything to Lisa Marie. Everything. His will was crystal clear. His daughter was his sole heir. She was supposed to inherit Graceland, the royalties, the estate, all of it when she turned 25. That was Elvis's wish. His explicit, legally documented wish. But here's what most people don't know. Here's what gets glossed over in all those glowing profiles about how Priscilla saved Graceland and turned it into a gold mine. Lisa Marie didn't just inherit money and property. She inherited control, or at least she was supposed to. Priscilla was named executor of the estate until Lisa Marie came of age. That's normal. That makes sense. You don't hand a 9-year-old girl the keys to a multi-million-dollar empire, but executor is supposed to be a temporary position, a caretaker role. You're supposed to manage things responsibly and then step aside when the actual heir is ready. Priscilla never stepped aside. Not really. She built a structure around that estate that made her indispensable. That made it almost impossible for Lisa Marie to ever truly control what was supposed to be hers. And she did it so carefully, so strategically, that most people praised her for it, called her a savvy businesswoman, applauded her for saving Elvis's legacy. But saved it for who? That's the question nobody asks. Because from where I'm standing, Priscilla saved it for Priscilla. Let me tell you what happened in those early years after Elvis died. Vernon, my uncle, Elvis's father, was devastated, broken. He'd lost his son. The grief nearly killed him, and Priscilla stepped in during that vulnerability and started making moves, started positioning herself not just as the executor, but as the public face of Elvis's legacy, the interpreter, the authority. And my family, we were shut out, slowly at first, then completely. Decisions were made without us. Plans were developed without our input. We'd show up for meetings about Graceland, about Elvis's estate, about how to honor his memory, and we'd be treated like outsiders, like we were guests in our own family's legacy. My grandmother lived at Graceland until she died. That was her home. Elvis wanted her there. But the way Priscilla operated, you'd think Mini-Me was some kind of burden, some obstacle to be managed rather than the matriarch of the family who raised the man we were all supposedly honoring. And then there's what happened with the business itself. Priscilla loves to tell the story about how Graceland was going broke, how the estate was bleeding money, how she had this brilliant idea to turn it into a tourist attraction, and that's what saved everything. She's dined out on that story for 40 years, built her entire reputation as a businesswoman on it. But here's what she doesn't mention. The estate wasn't just going broke randomly. Decisions were being made, decisions she was part of that drained resources. And then, conveniently, she got to swoop in as the savior with the solution. You see how that works? Create the problem, then take credit for solving it. And all the while, Lisa Marie was growing up watching this happen, watching her mother build an empire on her father's name, watching Priscilla become Priscilla Presley, businesswoman and guardian of Elvis's legacy, while Lisa Marie was just the daughter, the heir who somehow had no real power over her own inheritance. When Lisa Marie finally did take control of the estate in 1993, she inherited something very different from what Elvis intended. Yes, there was money. Yes, there was value. But she also inherited a structure where her own mother had become so entrenched, so publicly identified with Elvis's legacy, that challenging her meant challenging the entire machine. And here's the cruelest part. When Lisa Marie started making her own decisions about the estate, when she tried to actually exercise the control that was supposed to be hers, she was painted as reckless, impulsive, not as smart as her mother. The narrative became, Lisa Marie is squandering what Priscilla built. Lisa Marie doesn't understand business the way Priscilla does. But whose estate was it? Who did Elvis leave it to? Who was supposed to have that control all along? The financial destruction that happened later, Lisa Marie losing her fortune, the lawsuit, the devastation. It didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened to a woman who had been systematically undermined her entire life, who'd been made to feel like she wasn't competent enough to manage what was rightfully hers, who'd watched her mother build a brand around her father while she stood in the shadows. And through all of it, Priscilla maintained this image, the devoted ex-wife, the protective mother, the brilliant businesswoman who saved Elvis's legacy. Meanwhile, the actual heir, the person Elvis wanted to inherit everything, ended up broke, traumatized, and fighting legal battles just to maintain some connection to her own father's estate. You want to know what really happened? Priscilla built her empire on Lisa Marie's inheritance. She used her position as executor not just to preserve the estate, but to entrench herself so deeply that she became irreplaceable. And she did it while Lisa Marie was too young to fight back, while my family was too grief-stricken to see what was happening, while Vernon was too broken to stand up to her. By the time any of us realized what had happened, it was too late. The machine was built. The narrative was set. Priscilla was Elvis's legacy, and the rest of us were just people who used to know him. I watched board meetings where my family's input was dismissed, where Priscilla would smile and nod and then do exactly what she'd already decided to do. I watched her position herself in photographs, in interviews, in documentaries, always at the center, always the authority, always the one who really knew Elvis. And I watched Lisa Marie try to find her place in all of it, try to connect with her father's memory through an estate that her own mother controlled, try to be Elvis's daughter in a legacy that had somehow become Priscilla's property. That's not stewardship. That's not honoring someone's wishes. That's a calculated takeover dressed up as devotion. And Lisa Marie paid the price for it her entire life. When she told me 3 weeks before she died, "Don't let her rewrite me the way she rewrote Daddy," this is part of what she meant. The financial betrayal. The inheritance that became a prison. The legacy that should have been hers but somehow never was. Priscilla wants you to believe she's the hero of this story. The savvy businesswoman who preserved Elvis's empire. But empires built on other people's grief aren't legacies. They're graveyards. And Lisa Marie spent her whole life haunting the one her mother built. There's something you need to understand about grief. Real grief, the kind that cracks you open and empties you out, it doesn't perform well. It's not articulate. It's not camera-ready. Real grief makes you ugly. It makes you incoherent. It happens at 3 in the morning when nobody's watching and you can't breathe because the loss is so heavy it's crushing your chest. Priscilla's grief has always had perfect lighting. Every August, like clockwork, when Elvis Week rolls around, there she is. Graceland, candlelight vigil, cameras everywhere. And Priscilla, dressed in black, walking solemnly, her face carefully composed in that expression of dignified sorrow that photographs so well. Year after year after year. The devoted ex-wife, still mourning, still honoring, still grief-stricken after all these decades. And the world eats it up. They call her devoted. They call her loyal. They marvel at how she's kept Elvis's memory alive, how she still loves him after all this time, how she's dedicated her life to preserving his legacy. But I have to ask, whose grief is this, really? Who is this performance for? Because the people who actually loved Elvis, the family members who woke up the morning he died and felt like the world had ended, we weren't invited to perform our grief publicly. We weren't given microphones and magazine interviews and documentary cameos to talk about our loss. We grieved in our homes, in the quiet, in the places where cameras don't go and nobody's taking notes for the next best-selling memoir. My grandmother grieved until the day she died. My Uncle Vernon grieved himself into an early grave. My mother carried that loss for the rest of her life. None of them got to turn that pain into a brand. None of them got paid for their tears. But Priscilla, she's made a career out of mourning Elvis. And here's what makes it so insidious. She's so good at it. The performances are so polished, so perfectly calibrated that most people don't even realize they're watching a show. They think they're witnessing genuine emotion, authentic love, the beautiful tragedy of a woman who lost the great love of her life and never quite recovered. Except here's what nobody talks about. Priscilla left Elvis. She divorced him. She moved on with her life, started relationships with other men, built her own career. And that's fine. That's her right. People get divorced. People move forward. But you don't get to move forward and then spend the next 50 years acting like you're the grieving widow who never got over him. You don't get to leave someone and then claim ownership of their death. But that's exactly what she's done. She positioned herself as the chief mourner, the primary griever, the person whose pain matters most. And in doing that, she pushed everyone else to the margins, made our grief smaller, less significant, less worthy of attention. I remember Elvis's funeral. I remember the chaos, the cameras, the crowds. And I remember watching Priscilla navigate it all with this eerie composure. While the rest of us were falling apart, barely able to stand, she was managing, orchestrating, making sure she was positioned correctly, making sure the world saw her grief in exactly the right light. And Lisa Marie, Lisa Marie, she was 9 years old. 9. She'd just lost her father. And even then, even at that funeral, she had to share her grief with her mother's performance of grief. Had to watch Priscilla collect sympathy and attention while she stood there, a little girl trying to understand why her daddy wasn't coming back. That pattern never stopped. Every anniversary, every memorial, every tribute, Priscilla made sure she was at the center of it. Not Lisa Marie, the daughter, not Vernon, the father, not the family who'd known Elvis since before he was Elvis. Priscilla, always Priscilla. And here's the truly sinister part. She learned to weaponize that grief, learned to use it to shut down criticism. Anyone who questioned her, anyone who challenged her authority over Elvis's legacy, anyone who suggested maybe she shouldn't be the sole voice of his memory, they were being disrespectful. They were dishonoring Elvis. They were attacking a grieving woman who'd already suffered so much. She built a shield out of dead man's memory, and she used that shield to protect herself from accountability for decades. Lisa Marie saw this, lived with it, tried to find space for her own grief inside her mother's performance, and it broke something in her. How do you mourn your father when your mother has turned mourning into a monetized spectacle? How do you connect with his memory when every public expression of that memory has to go through your mother's carefully managed brand? You can't, so you grieve alone, in private, in the dark. And you watch your mother on television talking about the great love of her life, and you wonder why her performance of losing him seems more real to the world than your actual loss of him. I've watched Priscilla at memorials where family wasn't even invited, where decisions about how to honor Elvis were made without consulting the people who actually raised him. I've seen her give interviews where she speaks with absolute authority about Elvis's final years she wasn't even present for, while the people who were there, who held his hand, who saw him every single day, are never asked to speak. Because this isn't about honoring Elvis. It never has been. It's about maintaining control over the narrative. It's about making sure Priscilla remains the authority, the interpreter, the person whose version of Elvis is the version the world accepts. And to do that, she needs the spotlight. She needs the memorial services. She needs Elvis Week and the vigils and the interviews and the documentaries. She needs to be seen grieving because that grief is her currency. That's what keeps her relevant. That's what maintains her position as the guardian of his legacy. Real grief doesn't need an audience. Real grief doesn't have a press schedule. Real grief doesn't get turned into coffee table books and limited series and speaking engagements. Real grief just is. It sits with you in the quiet. It shows up at random moments. It doesn't care about cameras or public perception or brand management. But Priscilla's grief, it has perfect timing. It arrives on cue. It looks beautiful in photographs. It serves a purpose. And that purpose isn't honoring Elvis. It's elevating Priscilla. It's making sure that when people think of Elvis Presley, they also think of her. Making sure SHES Chinese letter connected to his legacy, his fame, his cultural immortality. She spent 50 years turning his death into her life's work. And somewhere in all that performance, in all that carefully staged mourning, the actual person, Elvis, the man we loved, got lost. He became a prop in her show, a symbol she could deploy whenever she needed sympathy or attention or another platform. Lisa Marie understood this better than anyone. She watched her mother grieve professionally while she grieved for real. She watched Priscilla cry for cameras while she cried alone. And she knew, she knew, that even her own grief for her father would eventually be absorbed into her mother's narrative. That Priscilla would find a way to make even Lisa Marie's death about her own pain, her own loss, her own suffering. That's not love, that's not devotion, that's something else entirely. something that needs death to feel alive, something that feeds on loss to maintain relevance. And the world keeps applauding the performance. There's one thing Priscilla didn't account for when she spent 50 years building her version of history. One thing she couldn't predict, couldn't control, couldn't manage with press releases and carefully worded statements. Lisa Marie wrote it all down. Not just fragments, not just scattered memories or angry journal entries written in moments of frustration. I'm talking about detailed, documented testimony, recordings, letters, accounts of conversations, events, decisions, a comprehensive record of what actually happened behind the closed doors of Priscilla's carefully managed empire. And Lisa Marie did this deliberately, methodically, because she knew her time was running out. She knew her health was failing. And she knew that once she was gone, Priscilla would do to her exactly what she'd done to Elvis: rewrite her, reshape her, turn her into whatever character best served the narrative. So Lisa Marie created an insurance policy. The truth, in her own words, preserved in ways that can't be edited or spun or explained away. And Priscilla is absolutely terrified of it. I know this because I've watched her scramble. I've seen the legal maneuvering, the attempts to control what gets released and when, the suggestions that Lisa Marie wasn't in her right mind toward the end, the quiet campaigns to discredit material before it even sees the light of day. That's not the behavior of someone with nothing to hide. That's panic. Because here's what Priscilla understands better than anyone. She's built everything on being the sole authority, the person who knew Elvis best, the person who can tell you what he really thought, really felt, really wanted. She's been the gatekeeper of his memory for half a century, and that position has given her power, relevance, wealth, and control. But Lisa Marie's testimony threatens all of it, because Lisa Marie wasn't just Elvis's daughter. She was Priscilla's daughter. She saw both sides. She knew what Priscilla said publicly and what she said privately. She witnessed the contradictions. She lived through the manipulation, and she documented it. That's the smoking gun Priscilla can't spin away. You can discredit cousins and distant family members. You can dismiss aunts and grandmothers as bitter or jealous or misremembering. But your own daughter, your own child, testifying about what she experienced, what she witnessed, what you did to her and to her father's memory, that's different. That cuts through all the PR, all the performance, all the carefully constructed mythology. And it's not just about Elvis. Lisa Marie wrote about her own abuse, about the boyfriend Priscilla allowed into their lives, about the trauma she endured while Priscilla looked the other way, or worse, knew and did nothing. Lisa Marie put that in her memoir, published it for the world to see. And even that wasn't enough for Priscilla to say, "My daughter told her truth and I support her." Instead, we got the discrediting campaign. The suggestions that Lisa Marie's addiction struggles made her unreliable. The implications that maybe her memories weren't accurate. The mother throwing the daughter under the bus to protect the narrative. But what Lisa Marie left behind goes beyond the published memoir. There are recordings that haven't been released, conversations with family members, with therapists, with people she trusted, documentation of financial dealings, of estate decisions, of the ways she was systematically excluded from control over her own inheritance. It's all there, preserved, waiting. And some of us are making sure it gets out. This isn't about revenge. I want to be very clear about that. This isn't some vindictive campaign to destroy Priscilla just for the sake of destruction. This is about giving Elvis and Lisa Marie something they were denied in life, the right to have their truth told without someone else's filter. Elvis can't speak for himself anymore. Lisa Marie can't speak for herself anymore, but their words still exist. Their real experiences, their real feelings, their real story, it's all still here. And it deserves to be heard without Priscilla's editing, without her spin, without her strategic omissions and calculated reframing. That's what terrifies her. Not that people will think badly of her. She's already weathered criticism before and survived it. What terrifies her is losing control, losing the position as the ultimate authority on Elvis Presley, having to share the narrative space with voices that contradict hers, having to face documentation that proves her version of events isn't the only one, and in many cases isn't even the true one. I've dedicated what's left of my life to making sure those voices are heard. Lisa Marie asked me to do this. On her deathbed, with her children in mind, with her father's legacy in mind, she asked me to make sure the truth came out. And I will honor that request if it's the last thing I do. Because I'm the last one left from my generation. The last witness who was there, who saw it all happen, who can stand up and say with absolute certainty, that's not how it was. Vernon is gone. Mini-Me is gone. Delta is gone. My mother is gone. Even Lisa Marie is gone now. But I'm still here, and I still remember everything. Priscilla has counted on time erasing us, on the witnesses dying off one by one until there's nobody left to contradict her, until she's the only voice remaining, and her version becomes history by default simply because there's no one left to challenge it. She miscalculated, because I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not alone. There are others, family members, people who worked with Elvis, people who knew Lisa Marie, who are done staying silent. We're coordinating, we're organizing, we're making sure that when the full story comes out, it comes out with evidence, with documentation, with the kind of proof that can't be dismissed as bitter family members making things up. This is for Elvis, the real Elvis, not the tragic figure Priscilla's been selling. The man who loved his family fiercely, who was more complex and more beautiful than any version she's presented. Who deserves to be remembered for who he actually was, not who it's convenient for him to have been. This is for Lisa Marie, who fought like hell to tell her truth and deserves to have it honored, not discredited by the very person who should have protected it. Who left behind children who deserve to know their mother's real story and their grandfather's real legacy. And this is for every family member who's been erased, dismissed, written out of history because they were inconvenient to Priscilla's narrative. They mattered. Their love mattered. Their presence in Elvis's life mattered, and they will not be forgotten. The truth is coming, and no amount of PR management, legal maneuvering, or public performances of grief are going to stop it. Priscilla's had 50 years to tell her version. Now it's time for the rest of us to tell ours. And I promise you, when you hear what Lisa Marie left behind, when you see the documentation, when you read the words of the people who were actually there day after day, everything you thought you knew about this story is going to change. The reckoning is here, and I'm ready. If you believe Lisa Marie deserves to be heard, if you believe Elvis's real family deserves their story back, then don't let this get buried. Subscribe, share this video, and make sure the world sees what Priscilla's been hiding. This is just the beginning. The full documentation is coming, and I'm not stopping until the truth wins. Stand with us.